We have more for your ears only. I'm Catherine Herzog.
I'm David Alpern with this quote from the news. Malala's plight has touched a lot of people, but remember, you are dealing with a very confused society. That was Pakistani Parliament opposition member and columnist Ayaz Amir on his countrymen's divided reaction to the near-fatal shooting of a teenage advocate for women's education and detention of relatives of the suspected shooter, as the girl responded well to treatment in England. Some Pakistanis say U.S. drone killer strikes are at least as great an outrage. Now this.
من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda.
Until last month's 9/11 anniversary terror attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya, reportedly inspired at least in part by the lingering spirit of al-Qaeda, elimination of al-Qaeda creator Osama bin Laden had seemed the most unarguable achievement of Barack Obama's administration. But even as he announced the nighttime raid on bin Laden's compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan, Obama warned that the war with terror was far from over. And the story of that raid still has much to say about how well U.S. forces are prepared for that continuing struggle and how the Obama White House deals with such challenges.
The first book to include the president's own perspective on the mission is The Finish, The Killing of Osama bin Laden, from Grove Atlantic Monthly Press. It's by Mark Bowden, most famous for his account of a more misbegotten military mission in Somalia, Black Hawk Down. And to talk about the president's views and role, as well as the mission and all the intelligence and preparation leading up to it, for your ears only, we're pleased to have Mark Bowden on the line. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, David.
You say that the tracking down of bin Laden, following communications, couriers, much more, was an ongoing process that might well have led to the raid, or at least consideration of it, no matter who was president. What was Obama's most important contribution before actually giving the go-ahead?
Well, I think he entered office having articulated very clearly that the top leaders of al-Qaeda ought to be the nation's primary focus, at least for our national security. And he also met with his top intelligence chiefs very soon after taking office and made it clear to them that targeting bin Laden and al-Zawahiri, bin Laden's number two, were the top priorities of his administration, and he wanted monthly progress reports.
You say that there was talk at the highest levels of a public trial for bin Laden, though we've seen how difficult that can be. But you also say that from the way the raid actually unfolded, it seemed there was at least an unspoken order not to take bin Laden prisoner. Talk about those conflicting interests.
President Obama has made it clear, and he made it clear to me, that he believes trying these top-level terrorists in criminal court is the right thing to do. And he's made that effort without success, with most notably trying to try Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in Manhattan. And what he said was that if he had been able to present or to hold bin Laden captive or capture him, that he would have the sort of political capital that he felt he needed in order to make these kinds of trials happen. So he told me, and I believe him, that was his preference. On the other hand, I don't believe the president was telling the SEAL team that's raiding a house at night with armed enemy inside that they are to significantly add to the risk to themselves in order to take bin Laden alive. I think that when the SEALs raided the compound, their first priority was getting in and out alive and unhurt themselves. And then, of course, when they were fired upon as they initially approached the house, that would have made them very disinclined to wait around to see if someone else was going to take a shot at them.
Well, until the end, you make clear that there were significant doubts the target was bin Laden. What were the various odds presented to the president, and how did he say he decided?
The levels of certainty were all over the map. Everything from the head of the CIA analysts, who was 95% certain, as were several others, that the hidden man in the compound was bin Laden. And then there were others from the National Counterterrorism Center weighing the same evidence who were only 20 to 40% convinced. So, what the president told me was that the assigning a percentage to a level of certainty was just a method he found of disguising uncertainty, and he just concluded fairly early on that this was a 50-50 proposition, and that was the way he approached it.
You talk about the many times that the SEAL mission was reviewed, rethought, red-teamed, as you write. But you also note that the rehearsals, especially as conducted in Nevada, had a nearly fatal error in them.
That's right. They had built a very faithful replica of the compound to practice on in North Carolina. But when they moved out to Nevada, what they were doing out there primarily is rehearsing the entire mission, which consisted mostly of flying these two Black Hawk helicopters an hour and a half in and out of what would ultimately be the target house in Abbottabad. So when they reenacted or they rehearsed it out in Nevada, they didn't bother to build a faithful replica of the compound in Abbottabad, and instead of building a stone wall around the compound, they just put up a chain-link fence to indicate where it was. And of course, when these warm helicopters arrived after flying low and fast for an hour and a half, as they pulled into a hover over a space surrounded by a chain-link fence, the heat from the helicopter dissipated more rapidly. But when they got over the walled-in compound in Abbottabad, that heat was trapped underneath the helicopter, and the air density decreased, and the helicopter began to fall.
How does your perspective on the bin Laden mission change as we see that the spirit and descendants of al-Qaeda can still kill a U.S. ambassador in Libya or motivate a plan to bomb the Federal Reserve Bank in Manhattan, as we learned from an arrest last week?
The organization that put together the attacks on 9/11 was a very sophisticated, well-funded, intelligently run international organization. They basically recruited people from around the world, transported them to the United States, got them flight training, essentially steered them onto those planes on September 11th. That was an extraordinarily sophisticated operation. And the organization that pulled that off is basically dead. And I think that the death of Osama bin Laden really was the capstone on efforts that had pretty much taken it apart in the years just prior. But that doesn't mean that you won't have small Islamist extremists throughout the region who fly the al-Qaeda flag and who, to aggrandize themselves and to attract recruits. And they're dangerous, but they're mostly dangerous in their own neighborhoods.
Mark Bowden's new book is The Finish, The Killing of Osama bin Laden, from Grove Atlantic Monthly Press.
Quote from the news, every once in a while they open up the pressure cooker and let out some steam. That was Cuban-born Miami lawyer Raul Hernandez Morale on a new Cuban visa system to let more people leave and re-enter the country, though not professionals who they fear losing permanently.
Next, bearing up to bad news for your ears only.